it don't get everything is true, but what it don't...
Boss, you can't go on ignoring this rock and roll stuff anymore. Every hotel and club in the country's wiring for information.
Hello, Groove Dogs. Welcome to the Runaway Radio Rewind, a program that looks and listens back to the heyday of one of America's truly great radio stations, the legendary and late KLOL. It's the Runaway Radio Rewind. And now, here's your host, Steve Robinson.
Thanks for being here. It's time for another Runaway Radio Rewind, where we salute the legendary radio station, Rock 101 KLOL. Today we'll hear from media guru Mike McGuff. Uncle Waldo was always here on the show, but I thought to start off, we changed things up a bit. I mean, look, I know it's August, but this recipe is too funny to pass up. Let's start the show with the Stevens Pruett fruitcake recipe. It's very tasty on the Runaway Radio Rewind.
And now, 101 KLOL's best ever fruitcake recipe. Not only for Christmas, but all year long. Here's what you'll need. 1 cup of butter, 1 cup of sugar, 4 large eggs, 1 cup dried fruit, 1 tablespoon baking powder, 5 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon baking soda, 1 tablespoon of salt, lemon juice, 1 cup brown sugar, nuts, 1 or 2 quarts of whiskey. Now, before you start, sample the whiskey to check. Good, isn't it? Now go ahead, select a large mixing bowl, measuring cup, etc., and check the whiskey again, as it must be just right. To be sure the whiskey is of the highest quality, pour 1 level cup into a glass and drink it as fast as you can. Okay? Repeat. Now, with an electric mixer, beat 1 cup of butter into a large fluffy ball. Add 1 tablespoon of sugar and beat again. Meanwhile, make sure that the whiskey is of the finest quality. Cry another tub. Open second quart if necessary. Add 2 large legs, 2 cups fried droot, and beat till high. If droot gets stuck in beaters, just pry it loose with Drewscriber. Sample the whiskey again. Check for Tunskiskity. Next, sift 3 cups of salt or anything, it really doesn't matter. Sample the whiskey. Sift half pint of lemon juice. Fold in chopped butter and strained nuts. Add babble spoon of brown sugar, whatever color you can find, and mix well. Grease oven and tum cake pan to 350 degrees. Now pour the whole friggin' mess into the oven and bake it. Check whiskey again and boat again.
Happy baking. Hey, it's Steve Robinson. If you haven't done so already, check out RunawayRadioRewind.com. Let's now hear from Mike McGuff.
The Stevens and Pruett Show was a show with characters, players, walk-on talent. There were so many characters that came in and through Stevens and Pruett's program. And do you have any perspective on some of the players, Lanny Griffith, Martha Martinez, Brian Shannon, Kevin Dorsey, how did that cast of talent come together for that show?
Well, Stevens and Pruett had a great cast of characters, and you could kind of look at it as maybe 3 eras of KLOL, of Stevens and Pruett on KLOL. They had the original cast that they brought down from Dallas, which was the Boner, or Brian Shannon, and Martha Martinez, who did news. And so they had already been a crew at the Dallas and worked well together, and came down here and started this from nothing on KLOL, because KLOL at the time was needing a morning show to kind of boost it a bit. Now, Stevens and Pruett were a known commodity, but they hadn't really been on the air in 10 years in Houston, and that's kind of a long time for talent to be away and people to still remember them. I'm sure some remembered them. But they definitely had Stevens and Pruett were extremely talented, but that cast around them really made a big difference in putting the show together, because they had a group of people to rely on and work with and support them. You heard a lot of different voices on the show, but they were very careful in taking people whose voices didn't sound alike, so you could always tell who was talking. I mean, obviously, Brian Shannon's a great voice actor, and what he did is the boner.
I can't cook. I hate to cook, and I'm not going to cook. I don't care what
You should cook. I shouldn't have to cook. I make the best toys. I'm like, it's Santa.
And he did an amazing job adding in sound effects and really running that board, because sound effects were such a major part of that show. So not only is he really the master control or mission control like NASA behind Stevens and Pruett, he's on the air contributing. He's adding in sound effects. He's, I guess, like working the phones and playing back stuff. I mean, I don't know how he must have been exhausted when that show was over to be able to pull that off. But, he was with them the whole time. But like I said, Martha Martinez was great on news. You had Lanny Griffith doing traffic, but then, that would change into, after Barry Warner left doing sports, you had Craig Roberts there, Craig Roberts, he didn't even need this job. He was the main sportscaster on Channel 2 for years. I mean, very popular on that station. He would work nights. I mean, he got off the air at, close to 11 and then was back on the air for Stevens and Pruett in the morning. I mean, that's not normal for your TV sports guys to be going and really doing morning radio every day, but he did it because he told me he just loved being there, he loved them, and had so much fun. And that was, to him, he told me, I think, quote, that's what broadcasting was about. He really enjoyed that. I mean, and then Lori came on later in traffic, and Chuck Schramek with news, and they changed up producers. There's so many people to name that show always had. Maybe it helped keep the show fresh in a way, bringing in so many different voices and thoughts behind the show, that it really never got dull, because Stevens and Pruett were able to adjust, I think, with the times. And a lot of shows can't necessarily do that. They become stale and kind of boring and move on somewhere else. But I mean, they lasted, basically to the end of the station. And people have told me they always thought that Stevens, they let go of Mark Stevens because there's probably a money issue. You had two high-priced talents and one had to go. And that's kind of what people told me in my documentary. Now, I have to add, the whole reason I'm doing this documentary, it's really Lanny Griffith's fault. The traffic master, he bondaged me into doing this whole film project in a way, because my original idea was with my blog. I thought, I was actually angry, of course, like everyone else, when KLOL was off the air. And in around, I guess it was 2010, I thought, what if we just got a bunch of people together from the station and did kind of like a one-time show where people could come in and for a theater and buy tickets. It's like a Q&A session, get to hear some stories. And he's like, no, you should, you have a TV background. Why don't you do a documentary? And then the light bulb went off. Oh, maybe I should do a documentary. Not realizing what I was getting into, but I do think a documentary is something that is not a one-time deal, like maybe a stage performance Q&A, but it will last forever. And there are already people interested in airing it out there. So I think that it could be a great time capsule for Houston, because KLOL's story kind of mimics Houston. When you're watching this, you're going to see Houston grow up in a way with KLOL. I think it's something that broadcasting students of the future should look back on and see what it was like back then. It's different. Broadcasting is changing. It's always going to change. We, film had black and white with no audio, and now look at what you're dealing with. Radio was mostly on AM and live, and now it's totally different. You have the internet come in. Of course, television used to be on film and is now on video. There's always changes, but I think it's great to look back at what was, and I think you can always learn from the past with media. I think KLOL's story is something that future broadcasters can always look back on and see kind of the right way to do things.
Talk about the promotional films that KLOL would generate on its own internally. It would write, shoot, produce, and publish its own marketing movies from time to time, year after year after year. Other stations didn't do that.
KLOL's promotional videos were a very odd thing because I don't know of many other stations that ever did anything like this. Occasionally you'd have a TV spot, for a new radio station that had the logo and maybe some video or pictures of the artists they play, but KLOL almost thought of itself like a multimedia company before that was really something. You hear multimedia all the time today, but they were doing that even early in the 70s. What people don't know is they had 2 TV shows in the time that Pat Fant was there. There was a show in the early 70s, Mother's Midnight Mix, which aired on television and simulcasted the station. And it was, there's only a little bit of video left of it, but it's a very trippy 70s type of show. That went off the air when Pat Fant left originally, but when he came back, even before he had officially signed on as general manager, they had 101 Rock Place, which was on Channel 20, and that is MTV for Houston, a rock version. It played videos. The DJs were introducing the videos. They had little comedy segments introducing videos.
Hey, all right, this is Bunny O'Fay on 101 Rock Place, and I want to send this one out to all you little cottontail mamas and papas. Oh, let me spin another one here for you. Oh, that's hot wax. Keep on thumping.
And that signal aired on KLOL at the same time that it was on Channel 20. So what a unique way to get in front of your audience. In fact, I think 101 Rock Place had they would interview like the Scorpions when they were in town. I don't even know if those interviews aired on the radio station. They might have, but definitely they were doing unique interviews just for the television show. And then KLOL always put out sales videos to promote itself with advertisers that were these high concept, glossy looking TV productions that it looked like someone, honestly, it was probably better than some TV stations' promotions at the time. If you look back on YouTube of what they were doing, it's unbelievable how visual of a station Pat Fant wanted that station to be. And I think that's what sets it apart, because when listeners are going to connect to something that not only do they hear, but they also see it. They see the DJs. They feel like they know them. The visuals of the Runaway radio really stuck with people, and I think a lot of that is because of the television.
Thank you, sir. Facebook. We are there, and we'd like to be your friend, so like us, please, okay? Now it's time, kids, for Uncle Waldo.
And now it's time for the Stevens Pruett Comedy Bloodbath, specially written and designed for people just like you.
You mean like me or like him?
Not like me.
So, what do you want to do today?
I don't know. What do you want to do?
Well, I don't know. Hey, Arnold, what do you want to do?
Get down.
All right, get down. Woo! Get down. Hey, what do we do next?
Stay down.
All right, stay down. Yeah. Stay down. Ready to go?
Go.
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 You mean now?
Go now.
All right. Go now. Hey, is it safe?
Trust me.
All right. Yeah. Good morning. Good morning.
Cheapers, you fine arts lovers, wherever you are. Time to kick back and enjoy those legendary Stevens and Pruett, not ready for drive time players, starring in Uncle Waldo, teenage American wrestler type person. This script was authored by Eric D. Prock.
It's a Prock?
Go Prock yourself.
Stop that.
Yes. Yeah, our show begins minutes before the big wrestling match backstage as Coach Big Bruno gives some last-minute advice to American wrestler Uncle Waldo before he goes out to wrestle very big and very ugly Russian wrestler Boris Yeltserface. Let's join them now.
Uncle Waldo, this is it, buddy. This is it. You've been wrestling for a long time, and you finally made it, babe. And you can beat this big, ugly Russian. You're going to be the world champion. I can feel it, buddy. I can feel it.
Gosh, Big, I don't know. He's so big. He's so ugly.
Nonsense, Uncle Waldo. Now, I've seen you wrestle. I know you can beat this guy.
Yeah?
You're faster than he is. I know, but I need to warn you about one thing.
What's that, Coach Big?
Well, Uncle Waldo, this guy ain't nearly as fast as you are.
Yeah?
But he's got a thing called the pretzel hold.
The pretzel hold?
If he gets you in the pretzel hold, man, it's all over.
Oh, yeah.
Because nobody, I mean absolutely nobody, has ever got out of the pretzel hold.
I'll watch it, okay.
And the last time I saw some poor sap in the pretzel hold, why, we had to have the jaws of life to pry him out of it.
Oh, gosh, Coach Big. I don't know. I never even heard of the pretzel hold. I don't even know what to look for.
Now, don't you worry, Uncle Waldo. All you gotta do is keep moving. Keep away from this guy, but whatever you do, don't let him get you in the pretzel hole.
All right.
Well, the plot thickens. The wrestling match begins. The Russian wrestler and Uncle Waldo really go at it. They're all over the place. Uncle Waldo puts the Russian in a half Nelson. The Russian gets out of it. They're all over the mat. Uncle Waldo puts up a great fight, but in the end, the Russian wrestler grabs Uncle Waldo and twists him up into something unrecognizable. Oh my God, it's the pretzel hole! Oh no! Coach Big Bruno, seeing this, heads for the locker room, his head hanging down in disappointment.
Hang down your head, Big Bruno. Hang down your head and cry.
But suddenly, the crowd goes wild. Coach Big Bruno spins around, and to his surprise, he sees the referee holding Uncle Waldo's arm up in victory. Astonished, Coach Bruno rushes up to Uncle Waldo.
Uncle Waldo, that was incredible. What the hell happened? The last thing I saw, he had you twisted up in that pretzel hold. And oh my God, Uncle Waldo, how did you do it? How did you do it?
Well, Coach Big.
Yeah?
I did what you told me.
Good.
I tried to stay away from that pretzel hole.
Yeah?
But all of a sudden, I was all twisted up with that guy. I mean, the arms and legs were twisted every which way, sort of spun around there. I thought it was all over, man. I thought it was all over.
Well, then what happened?
Well, see, I'm all twisted up, you know?
Yeah?
I look up, and what do I see? I see these two big, ugly, testy, dangly, hangy downies in front of me. Right in front of my eyes here.
Yeah?
Well, I couldn't move, so I did the only thing I could do. I just opened wide, and I bit them as hard as I could.
Oh, no! Great, Uncle Waldo.
And you know, you'd be amazed at what you can do when you bite your own sacks.
Oh, come on! Good God almighty.
You've been listening to the Runaway Radio Rewind. Join us next week for more memories and goodness for the intelligentsia from the people who made the former KLOL what it was. Find us online at runawayradiorewind.com and be sure to grab your Runaway Radio gear. You can find the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Show us your dog, and we'll see you next week on the Runaway Radio Rewind.